Okay. So here we go. Parshas Mekeita, the first night of Chanukah, Freilichen, Chanukah, happy Chanukah, Chag Sameach. Chanukah is unique. Well, as we spoke about, there's no mitzvah to eat a meal on Chanukah. There should be seemingly to eat a meal, right? All the other holidays, Purim, on Rosh Hashanah, Passover, Pesach, Shavuos, there's a mitzvah to eat a meal. And when do we eat a meal? I just learned this with Rabbi Weinberg. We spent 10 minutes, we learned something really quickly. A meal is connected when the body was saved. When your body was saved, like in other words, your life was saved. And we say, what else do we do on Chanukah? We say Hallel every day, the full Hallel. And Hallel is done when the soul was saved, meaning there was something more, it was a spiritual battle. But the obvious question is, there was a battle that took place in Chanukah, right? In the war against the Greeks, Yehudis. But the sages were hinting to us and telling us that really the main miracle that happened was a spiritual miracle. That is the main emphasis. But however, they said you should still eat. It's not a bad thing to eat a meal, but there's no mitzvah to have a meal. Again, the emphasis, Chanukah is really a spiritual holiday. So then why do we emphasize the war, the winning of the war? So you have to understand during that time period, we were losing Jews, much like today, we were losing Jews to secularism. They were really embracing Hellenism. Pretty much every time we have a war or a period of trouble, like the times of Purim and whatnot, it was always that we embraced the culture. Even Egyptian, when we were in Egypt, we embraced the culture. And basically we started feeling accepted. And you kind of lose identity, and you're attracted to, I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly myself, and I think I've spoken about it many times, you're attracted to people who are very joyful. If they're joyful, you're like, well, what's the secret over there? I'm not so happy, but I think I'm doing the right thing. And then you start emulating them. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to emulate people who have very good qualities. It is very good to emulate. The problem is when you start emulating everything about the person. Yeah, what's one of the big problems with social media? That you think that their life is, I want that life. Oh, they're always happy, they're always dressed in the best clothes, and they're always smiley. I wish I could be that person. Yeah, sometimes you catch yourself saying that. The problem is you only see very little of them, and they're a total package. You have no idea what's really going on underneath. In fact, as the saying goes, if you really like someone, the chances, you really appreciate someone, you really like someone. How's it go? If you really like someone, the chances are you don't really know them. That's it. Or if you're very jealous of someone, the chances are it's a very good percentage you don't know who they are. You don't know them. So that's what happened. The Greeks, the Hellenists, who are Jews back in the times of Egypt, they were kind of like on the side, maybe they weren't the wealthiest, the best looking. They didn't know the most Torah. And here comes Greek culture, and they introduce fantastic technology. And Jews always embrace technology. The Torah says you should embrace technology. When new medicine, if medicine comes out, there's new, anything that could enhance your service of God, heating, electricity, cars, cell phones, computers, internet is unbelievable. You should be cautious when using it, because obviously it'll always be used out for klipa, right? There's something that there's holy and unholy, but you should embrace it. The thing is, though, you don't have what the Greeks wanted. They wanted us to embrace everything. If we're providing everything for you and you're loving it, the quality of your life is increasing, so accept everything. It's a package deal, man. You have to accept everything. And they couldn't stand that we didn't accept everything. And therefore, cancel culture came in. If you're not going to accept even one idea of what we believe in or what we stand for, then we have to cancel you. We have to erase everything about you. And what did they do? What was the main fight So there was a few fights going on. There was a civil war. There was, our own people killing ourselves. They were giving us over to the Greeks. They were the ones, much like in Russia, and the Nazis had the same thing, that they were ratting out their own people. And that was like, they thought that would be a quick way to get ahead. You always think that's the quickest way to get ahead. Yeah, if you start bashing your own people first. Or it's very easy for us to bash our family before anybody else, because we know more about them. We know where they're hanging out. We know what they say and what they think. And then you move on to your best friends, and then you move on to your cousins. Then, slowly and slowly. So that was exactly what happened. We had a civil war going on. So that we had to be very fearful about. And then the Greeks came, and like most of the time, by the way, they quickly didn't even care about the Jewish Hellenists. But the Greeks said, you have to embrace everything that we have. And we said no. And they said, okay, then you're going to have to pay the price. So we went into hiding. You guys know the story. And we eventually got our courage up together, and we stood for what we believed in, and we fought back, and we won. And then there was the miracle of the oil. And that's why, just by the way, I just want to point out something very interesting. I think I mentioned before, the language used, what the war was. What was the war in Hebrew? What did they use? What's the word, the verbiage they used to describe the war? Lahashkichem toireisecha. Lahashkichem torotecha. They made us forget your Torah. It really should just say Lahashkichem Torah. They made us forget Torah. So why do they say your Torah? Your meaning God. They tried to make us forget God's Torah. Because the war wasn't, they said, as we always I've pointed out many times, the war was on God. They said, if you don't see it, don't believe it. That's why they fought. They were against all these spiritual ideas. They got rid of bris milah, the circumcision. Kosher makes no sense. It's a spiritual idea. Mikvah, spiritual impurity. What is it? It's nothing. It doesn't make any sense. And a list of other things, tefillin, and so on and so forth. And that we fought against that, and we fought against that entire idea, and that's why the oil was that's why we lit the menorah specifically with pure olive oil. We could have used non-pure olive oil, but we used pure. And what's incredible is that nowadays we still light the menorah the most mehuder dika way. Mehuder comes the word hadar, which means to beautify, and it also means to be the most stringent. Yeah, if you want to beautify something, it requires a tremendous amount of effort usually. So when if you go to Israel and you want to get the best type of kosher, it's called mahadrin mina mahadrin. Mahadrin, like from the hadar, the most beautiful of the beautiful. In other words, it's the most effort, and it'll probably be the most expensive because there's a lot of oversight over it. But nevertheless, and that's how we light the menorah. Jews around the world light the menorah the most beautiful way, because we say, no matter what I've done, no matter how I act, kosher, not kosher, bris milah, not bris milah, tefillin, no tefillin, mikvah, no mikvah. At my core, I believe in God. And that is what the war that is what we were trying to do. We do it the most beautiful way to say, no matter what I've done up until now, and Chanukah epitomizes that whole idea. I believe in God. And to show you that I believe in God, I'm going to light the menorah in the most stringent way. All you really have to do is just light one candle every single day. That's it, for a moment. Just light a candle and walk away. But what do? We add each night. And we've been doing that since the time of the Holy Temple, Jews around the world, which is quite incredible. It just shows, again, the essence of the Jew. And what just a little Kabbalah over here, that what's the miracle? What was the miracle with? Olive oil. And what is olive oil? It's specifically in a period when the olive is crushed. The crushing of the olive reveals the juice in which you can light something beautiful. A beautiful light comes forth, showing that in times of our being crushed, that's when we shine. We have the ability to shine the most. You might think, I just want an easy life. Yeah, we all just want to have $20 million in the bank account and just do whatever we want at all times and have no pressure and no anything like that. But it's specifically in times but you're not going to reveal your you're not going to reach your greatest potential. We might convince ourselves in our heads that we can, but we really won't. It's specifically in times that we're crushed, and we all go through moments in our day, in our week, in our year, certainly, where we feel crushed. Yeah, we feel inadequate. We feel just deflated, but at those, usually the attitude should be that is a springboard to move forward. In fact, I'll tell you a story. Remendel Futterfass. I'm going to tell you another story about Remendel Futterfass, but this is one of my favorite. He lived in the Russian gulags, or the Russian prisons, where most people died, no problem, in Siberia. And the guards were always trying to crush his spirit, but they couldn't crush his spirit. And I'll tell a story later why, but just let me get to this point. And they said one day, Mendel, the Russian guard said, today's the day that you're going to die. We have orders to execute you. And obviously Mendel was distraught. But he said, please take me to the mikvah one last time. I want to purify my body before I get buried. In fact, we still do that till today. After a person passes away, we do something called tahara. We put it in a mikvah, or we pour buckets of water. It's extremely, it is the greatest mitzvah you can possibly do. Not everyone is able to even do it. You have to be chosen, whatever. I've never done it. So he said, I'll go to the mikvah. Now you have to understand, it's like the middle of the winter in Russia. You can't imagine how cold it is. And I don't even know if they had towels. I don't know if they're going to provide him with a towel, but nevertheless, they said, okay, fine. We'll drive you to the lake and you can jump in. So he gets undressed and he jumps in and they drive away. 3 miles away, 5 miles away from the lake. And, he comes out and he's sad, obviously, and distraught, and he knows he's going to die. And he says, this is it. Starts thinking, this is rock bottom. I'm naked. They took my clothes. I'm freezing. I have no food, no shelter. I'm at the bottom. And he thinks for a moment, and it starts to dawn on him, well, if I'm at the bottom, then the only way out, the only way is up from here. You can't go any lower. And he starts to laugh, and he gets joyful. Maybe he loses it a little bit, but he starts dancing. And he starts moving and dancing, and he makes it back to the prison, naked, dancing. I'm sure he was cold, but he made it back to the prison. And the prison guards that dropped him off it's a true story. They're out of their mind. They have no idea. I don't know if it was 5 miles, maybe it was a mile away. Out of their minds. And they came to him and they gave him his clothes back. And they said, we actually did not have orders. We just wanted to kill you. We did not have orders from on top to kill you. And now that you made a scene, everyone's watching you and they know you, and we can't kill you. So because of that, he lived. Anyway, just an incredible story. Story of perseverance, and when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up. That's the Jewish approach. The only way is up. Okay, let's move on a little bit to the parsha over here. I'm just gonna open it up. By the way, this is Parshas Mekeita. Mekeita is always read the week of Chanukah. And what's going on? Just to give a little bit of a story, the brothers sell Joseph because they think that he's perhaps like another Esav. That he's just tricking his father. He's telling us that we're going to bow down to him. He thinks he's going to be, the king. He's saying his mother will bow down to him. His mother's already dead. He's obviously they think he's cracked. And his father's buying into the story, it seems. Because it says Yaakov is an ish tam. He's a very simple person. He's obviously a genius, but he was like a simple approach to life, a simplicity, a wholesomeness. And they felt that their father was going to buy into it. So they felt that the best thing to do was to kill him. Not all of the brothers, but most of them, right? So they sell him. They ultimately sell him. They don't kill him. They sell him. And they make an oath. And this is very important because this will answer a lot of questions. The Medrash says, and Rashi brings down, they made an oath that whoever tells Yaakov, their father, that Yosef was sold and he's not dead, will have a cherem, will be put into a ban of ostracism, a spiritual. It's very spiritually significant. And they had God. It says that God came in on the oath. God was in on the oath. And we're going to see what that means. What does it mean God was in on the oath? So they said, we have a vow that we will never tell their father. That's why Yitzchak knew with prophecy, he was still alive. Yitzchak, the grandfather, knew with prophecy that Yosef was still alive, but he was fully aware of this oath. And so therefore he could not say, and he went to his grave saying that he never told his son that Yosef is alive, or I have prophecy that Yosef is alive. Okay, just remember that because that's going to come up in a second. So Yosef goes to jail. Eventually, his Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him because she sees with prophecy that they were going to have a child, or she was going to have a grandchild. Someone was going to be married into Joseph's family, and it was ultimately her daughter that was married to Joseph. They don't really talk. The Torah doesn't talk much about her, but she tries to seduce him. Yeah, he was extremely handsome and bright and rich and all that. So he was very desirable, and he would curl his hair because he thought it made him look better. It made him look more royal. And she wanted him, and he had to run out, and she got really mad, and she threw him in jail. Now, he was in jail. It's unclear for exactly how long he was in jail, but we know for sure he was in there 2 years longer than he should have, because what happened? So this is last week's parsha, Pharaoh's cupbearer, two of his servants, the cupbearer and the chef, they had to go to jail for different reasons, and they have dreams. One day they wake up and they have a bad dream. And Yosef says to him, this is a very powerful line, and I live with this idea. He looks at them. He's been in jail for at least 15 years, not 17 years. He says, Madua panecha royim hayom. Why are you guys so upset? So obvious question is, first of all, why are we upset? We're in jail. We're in prison, and we're going to be here for the rest of our lives, seemingly. What do you mean, why are we upset? There was something about their face that day that they looked down. And he says, Madua panecha royim hayom. Why are you sad? The only person who can ask such a question is a person who's living in a state of joy. An angry person is not really going to go to someone else. A sad person doesn't say to someone else usually, why are you so sad? It's usually like, you're not as sad as I am. So how could he have been joyful? Says the Torah that Yosef lived with joy. He had joy during that period of time. And why did he live with joy? And this is another story of Reb Mendel Futterfass, which I think helps illustrate the point. That one day, Reb Mendel was known to be a joyful person, even while he was in prison. And he was sitting around with a bunch of other prisoners, and one was, they were all upset, and one said, oh, I was a big professor, and now look at me. I can't lecture. I used to sit at the top of the podium, but I started sharing ideas against communism, and they threw me into jail. So my life, I'm a nothing now. I'm a nobody. Very depressed. Then they had a doctor. Oh, I was the greatest physician. I was known as the physician of such and such an area. Now what am I? I'm a loser. I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. And so he was depressed. It's a true story. And I think there was somebody else who had some sort of, they identified as, this is my identity. I'm a great writer, and I was an artist, and that was their identity. That's my identity. I'm an artist, and now I can't paint. I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. And they turned to Mendel and they said, Mendel, how come you're not sad and depressed like the rest of us? So he said, Mendel said, what do you want from me? He's like, you know what I was before I came in here? All my whole life, my identity was about serving God. So I served God when I was out of prison. Now I'm in prison. I continue to serve God. My identity didn't change. The circumstances, the environment, and the way I serve God has changed, but that is my identity, and I'm able to serve God even within prison. And that's what Yosef also saw his life that way. And we're going to see that later on in the Parshias when the brothers confront him, what he has to say. So Yosef, he lived a life of serving God, no matter what circumstance he was. And that's why Yosef is the only person that's called a tzaddik and a matzliach, an ish matzliach, a successful person. The only time the Torah ever uses the word matzliach, successful, they use it 3 times, and it's by Joseph, because Joseph was involved. He was a person that was involved in the lowest of the low, dealing with people's issues, just horrible issues around him and situations and environments. and yet still was able to serve God with joy. And God, the Torah says that is the definition of success. And that's why not only is he successful, they call him a tzaddik, a righteous person. Moshe is not called a tzaddik. Aaron is not called a tzaddik. All the others, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, are not called tzaddik. They don't use the word tzaddik because nobody was involved in the world to such an extent as Yosef, and yet still remained committed to God and a person who was able to lift people up and serve God with joy. And God says that is a tzaddik. That I think it's very, which is great because it's very relevant to our own lives. So they go into prison, and he says, actually, as the cupbearer they have a dream, and this is very important. They have a dream, both have a dream, and they were both distraught. That's why they were upset that day. And they say, and Yosef interprets the dreams. He says to the cupbearer, you're going to, I believe the cupbearer, you're going to be killed. Whatever, you're going to be killed. And to the baker, he says, you'll live. Or actually the opposite. The baker is going to die, and the cupbearer is going to stay there. So the cupbearer leaves. And that's exactly what happened. So they're about to leave, and Yosef says two times to the cupbearer, you're going to live, and you're going to be reinstated into your position. That's what your dream means. Please tell Pharaoh to think of me and get me out of prison, that I was framed. And he asked twice. And the Torah says, or Rashi brings down the fact that he asked twice, he had to spend 2 extra years in jail. Now, the question is, it's good to ask for help, no? In fact, you should. The Torah says you should do things in a tzaddikim. You should try to accomplish things in a way of nature. You should use out nature. Yeah, these people, these tzaddikim who have clairvoyancy and prophecy and can walk through walls, literally, they could if they wanted to, but they don't do it. Why don't they do it? Because they understand that God wants everything done within nature. So wasn't it very natural so what did Yosef do wrong? Yosef was like, he went to the cupbearer. You're going to speak to Pharaoh. You're going to have Pharaoh's ear. Please just put in a good word for me. So Rashi brings down from Tehillim a very famous verse that says, do not put your faith in the arrogant ones. And who's arrogant, says the Torah? The Egyptians are arrogant. And namely, the cupbearer. He was an arrogant person. Why? What happened? When the cupbearer was reinstated and Pharaoh had his dream. Pharaoh had a dream, 7 fat cows, 7 skinny cows, 7 thick fat stalks, 7 skinny stalks of wheat. Yeah, and they're each consuming one another. And he was very distraught. As you know, that's part of the story. He was very distraught, and he tried to get everybody to interpret the dreams, and nobody was able to interpret the dream to his satisfaction. And he was asking and he was pleading, does anybody know anyone who can interpret my dream? I'm having this dream and I'm very distraught. And it was distressing Pharaoh so much that the cupbearer believed that he was going to die. He thought that Pharaoh was going to die. Pharaoh was like wilting away, so to speak. No pun intended. Yeah, he was fading away. And the cupbearer felt there's going to be a change of administration. And I don't know who's going to be the next Pharaoh. And I will lose my job. Not only will I lose my job, perhaps they'll kill me for whatever they want to make up. I want Pharaoh to remain Pharaoh. So he went to him and he said, the cupbearer said, there's this Nar, this child who I met in prison that interpreted our dreams correctly. You should visit him. Now he said, a Nar, an Ivri. He didn't use very nice terms to describe Yosef. And he did it because he was arrogant. Yosef was 30 years old by the time Pharaoh came. Over 30. He was no Nar. But the cupbearer was he was very haughty and he was very, very arrogant. The Torah says, if someone's arrogant, you don't put your faith in an arrogant person. And Yosef should have known that. And because of that, he had to stay another 2 years. God would have found a different way. Perhaps he should have gotten the message a different way, had faith that there would have been a different way. Nevertheless, Pharaoh, and he waited 2 years. He never even told Pharaoh about Yosef. He only did it when he felt like his life was on the line, or his job was on the line, so to speak. So Pharaoh comes and Pharaoh tells him the story. He says, I heard you're a good interpreter. I just want to tell you something about dreams, by the way. 2 things about dreams. The Torah says dreams are meaningless nowadays. When you have a dream of something happening, it's, and this is actually, I find this fascinating. They say it's just your subconscious thoughts throughout the day. If you want to know what's bothering you subconsciously, look to your dreams. Now, don't interpret your dreams as some sort of prophecy that's going to happen. But nevertheless, it's an insight to tell you what you're thinking about during the day, and it's perhaps can tell you what's bothering you. There's some sort of issue bothering you. But if a fairy comes in on a unicorn and smacks you over the head, okay, smacking you over the head and it bothers you and it hurts you, chances are you have stress. Yeah, your dreams are usually very intense when you have a lot of stress. You have stress. You need to figure out the stress, the anxiety, but don't think there's some unicorn or fairy tale, fairy that's going to come into your life. It's not. The Torah says don't do that. We don't do that anymore. Now, okay, so Pharaoh comes. But back in the day, they were a little bit more spiritual. So back in the day, what's the story? Pharaoh says to Joseph, this is important. What does he say to Joseph? I was standing by the river, and there were 7 fat cows that were eating, and it was beautiful and very nice. And then 7 skinny cows came and completely consumed the fat cows. That was number 1. Then he goes on and he says, Vilma, you have a question?
Yeah, my son keeps asking me about this Pharaoh guy, if it's the same Pharaoh guy and how long he
good
lived.
Question. It's a very good question. It seems to be no, because it was quite a long period, but some opinions say yes. And when we get to another parsha, we'll explain why Pharaoh became arrogant, because Yaakov is going to give him a blessing, which we'll see in the next week's parsha, that only Pharaoh was able to do. But for now, we'll assume no. It's the safe assumption. It's not the same Pharaoh. But good question.
Thank you.
And then 7 skinny stalks are standing next to 7 fat stalks of wheat. Yeah, stalks of wheat are being consumed by. No, I'm sorry. He doesn't say that. He says 7. Sorry, it's very important. Normally I wouldn't be so particular, but there's a very interesting. I want to bring home a point. The question I'm going to raise is, why did Pharaoh, after this interpretation, make him the viceroy, the second in command of Egypt? And he told everybody, he's in charge. You have to listen to everything he says and do everything that he says. He's only second to command to me. What did Joseph do that Pharaoh was blown away? So now let me just tell you again. The original story, the original dream, the dream is told over twice. When Pharaoh has a dream, and then the way he tells it over to Joseph. The original story is 7 skinny cows are standing next to 7 fat cows are standing next to 7 skinny cows, and the skinny cows eat the fat cows. Then he has another dream. He wakes up and he's like, what the heck? And he goes back to sleep, and 7 fat stalks of wheat are standing next to 7 skinny stalks of wheat, and the skinny stalks eat the fat stalks of wheat. When he goes to Joseph, this is what he says. 7 skinny fat cows were standing next to 7 skinny cows, and the skinny cows ate the fat cows. Then he said 7 fat stalks of wheat were eaten by 7 skinny stalks of wheat. He left out one point, perhaps by accident. He didn't say they were standing next to each other. When Joseph tells Pharaoh what it means, 7 years of plenty there will be 7 years of plenty and abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. That's the fat cows being consumed by the skinny cows. And then he says what you need to do is prepare all of your food into storehouses, and you need to prepare enough for the next 7 years. Why are you telling Pharaoh what to do? He just told you, interpret the dream. He's saying 7 years of plenty there'll be 7 years of plenty, followed 7 years of severe famine. And that's it. That's what it means. Why are you saying, okay, now what you need to do is go and prepare your storehouses, and I'll teach you how to prepare the storehouses. Whoa, go-getter. Don't speak to the king like that. By the way, when they go speak for the king, they gave him they cleaned him up, they gave him nice clothing, and and they prepared him. They took him out of the dungeon and everything like that. The Torah is trying to tell us that you should always you should respect the position. That you should, you're going to speak with Pharaoh, the king. You should respect the king because the king is a reflection of God. Now, he could use it out for good or for bad because everything in this world could be used out for good or for bad. Nevertheless, you should respect the position. It says that Moshe and Aaron, their brothers, always spoke to Pharaoh politely, and they always came to Pharaoh, and they always spoke to him politely. It's very important that you should do that. Whether even the guy's evil, you don't have to be, you don't have to do what he says, but you should speak politely. So going back, the classic question is, Joseph, who gave you the right to say what you said? Off with your head. And Pharaoh then is blown away and makes him the viceroy. Because what Pharaoh didn't tell him, and what Joseph knew, because Joseph had prophecy and Pharaoh saw this, Pharaoh didn't say 7 stalks of grain, fat stalks of grain were standing next to 7 skinny stalks. But Joseph knew that, and Joseph said back to him, and now the part about the 7 stalks standing next to the 7 stalks, that means you need to prepare right away during the period of plenty. You need to prepare for what's to come. And Pharaoh realized that he didn't tell him that part of the story. But Joseph knew, because Joseph saw with clairvoyancy, and he says, now I know God is with you. And with that, he was, I don't think he wanted to be, but it seems clear that Joseph did not want to be the head of, it seems pretty, a rabbi seemed to say that he did not want to be in that position. Not that he wasn't fitting or capable. He was more than capable and more than fitting, but it wasn't his thing. It wasn't his thing. Sometimes a lot of times we're put into positions that we're not ready for. We feel we're not ready for it. Nevertheless, should be fully embraced, and you have the ability to do it. And you got to make it happen. Okay, so moving on. I think this is a quite fascinating part. So there's a famine in Israel. Joseph now is the viceroy, second in command. And there's a famine in Israel. And it said, Yaakov says to his children, and Yaakov has lived a life. He's aged tremendously. He's very frail. He's just so distraught for 20 something years already, 22 years, 20 years, 22 years. He hasn't seen his son. And he says to his children, go down to Egypt because there is food and grain down there, and go buy some stuff. Now, the Medrash tells us, and the Talmud tells us, that Yaakov was extremely wealthy. He actually did not need to go down there and buy any food. But 2 things, the Talmud says. One is that he saw that his neighbors were going down and buying. And you don't have to live such a life of opulence. He was trying to teach his children that we should remain humble, and we're not here to like show off. So you also go down there and buy grain because everybody else is doing it. Now, they could have brought the grain back and given it to their people, but and perhaps that's what they did, sold it at a lower price, perhaps, find any way to do tzedakah. But nevertheless, we're not ostentatious. As we learn in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, we dress a certain way. We try not to be ostentatious. Show so much. We don't want so many eyes on us. But it says, if you read the passage carefully, it says that Yaakov saw shever, that there's grain down in Egypt. Shever. Now, shever, Rashi points out, is a unique word for grain. Whatever, there's usually other words for grain, but shever for sure is not one of them. Shever also means hope. There was hope. What did it mean? He saw there was hope down in Egypt. What is that? What does that all mean? So this is where Chassidus comes in. But Yaakov, when we spoke about that oath that the brothers made with God, and they said, we cannot tell our father that he's really, that he wasn't killed, that he's actually alive. Who else was there? Joseph. Joseph was there, present at that oath. He was in the pit. He heard what was going on. The question is, Joseph had been viceroy for already 9 years or 6 years before he had met his father and told his father. All that period of time, why didn't he tell his father that I'm alive? He could have sent anybody he wanted. For 9 years, I believe, 9 years, he was viceroy, second in command, and he never told his father that he's alive. It's a bizarre idea. Makes no sense. It's because Joseph was there. What the oath, he was there at the present of the oath. But what was the oath? According to Kabbalah, the oath was, what do you mean God was involved in the oath? They said, until God gives us a sign to let us know that we should tell our father, we will not tell our father. That's what it means that God was in on the oath. What it means Yaakov saw hope in Egypt, God was starting to notify, he was sending notifications that now is the time. It's become time. And that's why Jacob told his sons to go down to Egypt, even though they didn't have to. And what did they do when they got there? Started looking for Joseph. That was the first thing they started. That was the main thing they started to do, to look for Joseph, because now was the time for the revelation. Not full-on blown revelation, but there was hope. Hope is like a pulse. It's pulsating, and it's letting you know, and it's cracks. There's cracks that are starting to come through. And Joseph was waiting for that. Joseph was waiting for that. The brothers were waiting for that, and things were starting to fall into place. Yeah, so the brothers come. I'm just looking through the parsha. The brothers come, and Joseph sees them. He notices them. He knows who's coming in to buy his stuff, because everyone's coming to buy from Joseph. Joseph is the wealthiest person in, well, Pharaoh is the wealthiest person in Egypt. Pharaoh, you want to be big at the top, you have a lot of money. Pharaoh was extremely wealthy, and that's why he was able to maintain his top position, because he was able to pay people. Why was he so wealthy, fabulously wealthy? Because Joseph had all the grain. The famine was starting, and so people were coming to buy grain from him. Joseph was in charge of all the storehouses. You had to talk to Joseph in order to get. So he saw that the brothers had come in. Now, they didn't recognize him because it had been 22 years. He had a big beard, big muscles. He was extremely good looking. It says the women would gaze at, they would love when they would walk through the streets, they would gaze at him because he was so beautiful. He looked very different. And he saw them, and he brought them in, and he accused them of being spies. In other words, he was trying to really hide his identity. And he calls them spies, and he's really trying to figure out, without telling them, because he knows it's not time to reveal who he is and that he's alive, but he's trying to get information from them. And I guess through scaring them and whatnot, they bow down to him, right? They bow down to him. So the prophecy has come true. And he tells them who he is. Sorry, he doesn't tell them who he is. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. They come, and he asks about the welfare of their father and the welfare of their brother, Binyamin. He goes, do you have a younger brother? I said, yeah, we have a younger brother, Binyamin. He's at home, and he says, okay, I'm going to keep one of the brothers here as collateral. You bring me that other brother. And they're like, our father, and they're saying to themselves, our father is not going to allow us to do that. And I think they even told them that. He said, well, then you're not getting back your other brother, Shimon. I believe that's who they kept. Am I wrong? I have to double check. They kept Shimon, and they go back to Egypt, and he has to go convince his, they had to go convince their father. And let me just see what time it is. Yehuda goes back. Yehuda, the leader of all the brothers, not the oldest, but the leader, the one whom kingship will come from, goes to his father and says, we need to, in order for us to get grain and to get our other brother back, we need to bring Binyamin. And Yaakov says, no way, Yehuda. I am not letting you bring, he's the last son that I have from Rachel. Everything will be built through him. I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting him go. And Yehuda says, this is important, very famous, I bet my Olam Haba, I will give up my Olam Haba, my world to come, my share in the world to come, if I don't bring him back. Yaakov says, okay, fine. With that, if you're going to say that, then I'll let you go. They take him. Lo and behold, Joseph takes Binyamin and holds him captive, and they think their father is just going to kill himself. He was just going to die. But ultimately, they did become reunited not long after, within a year. But it says something very interesting in the Medrash, in the Talmud. It says that that Yehuda didn't go into Olam Haba until Moses prayed on his behalf. Because it says like this: the words of a tzaddik affect the world immediately. They have an effect upon the world immediately. And because there was a period of time in which Binyamin was not reunited with his father, there was a payment. There was like, it had an effect. Yehuda lived in this, what's called it's in a world of nishta hin, nishta her. You're not there, you're not here or there. It's very painful, whatever that means for the soul. It's not like physical pain, but it can't get rest, like a proper, it's not in its proper place. It's not in its proper environment. It's all over, yeah? So for that entire period of when he died until Moses left Egypt, and the whole Jewish people, then Yehuda went to Olam Haba. Then he finally went to Olam Haba. And we see this happen again. Where do we see this happen again? That after the sin of the golden calf, and God wants to destroy the Jewish people, and he says to Moses, I will build the nation from you. I'm going to destroy them and build the nation from you. Moses says, if you do that, erase me from your book. God was very pleased with that. God loved that. Moses said, we're inseparable. These are my people. I'm the leader. I don't need to be in your Torah, your book in the Torah. And and what happens in the next Parsha, Parshas Tetzaveh, my bar mitzvah Parsha, Moses' name is not mentioned once. Ultimately, God forgave them. He forgave us. That's why we're here. But nevertheless, the words of a tzaddik have an effect upon the world. And he said, erase me from your book. And that had an effect upon the world that the next Parsha, there's no mention of Moses' name. It's the only Parsha, once he's introduced, that doesn't mention his name because it had an effect. So don't take the words of a tzaddik lightly. With that, I'm going to stop. Does anybody have any questions? All right. I believe you. Tonight, we'll do, God willing, Seder Nigunim. We'll have Tanya. We started over with Tanya. We'll have more Tanya. Rabbi Schneer. We'll have a lot of other classes. Women's class tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Women's only class on Tuesdays, 10 a.m. I wish you a freilich in Chanukah, a happy Chanukah. I just want to mention I'll mention one idea that I shared on my Instagram, but I just like the idea that there's two main times that we light candles, Shabbos and Chanukah. That's the idea. We light candles other holidays, but when you think of Passover, yeah, we got to light candles on Passover, but you think of matzah. When you think of Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah, yeah, you got to light candles, but you think of the shofar and you think of cheesecake and you think of, on Yom Kippur, you think of fasting, even though you have to light candles beforehand. Shabbos and Chanukah is all about candles. What's the difference? What's unique about them? Well, Shabbos candles they're lit while it's still light outside, and they're lit within the home. Meaning, what's the significance of that? That it's really about infusing. It's about the home. It's about bringing warmth and joy and kedusha and holiness into the home. The environment should be holy, the home environment, and that is fundamental to have a proper home, a home of warmth and of beauty and of kedusha, of holiness and spirituality. It's very important, and that needs to be worked on every week. As opposed to the Chanukah candles. The Chanukah candles are only lit after nightfall, not sunset, but 30, 40 minutes later when the stars come out, nightfall, and it has to be seen from another person. Another person has to see it, whether that means at the door, outside the door, or somebody else in your home. Meaning the light needs to be brought to the outside. It's not enough just to have your own home to be holy and spiritual and warmth, and that you feel holy and spiritual and warm. Yeah, we don't live on mountains on top of Everest or wherever. We don't live in the Himalayas. The Torah says you have to bring your warmth into the world. And that's why the story of Joseph is connected with Chanukah, because he got involved in the world. He brought everything. He brought himself into the world. And what's unique about the relationship between darkness and light is that the more light it is outside, the less the effect a candle has, as opposed to when it's very dark out. The darker it gets, the less light you need to banish the darkness away. Yeah, you can't imagine it's the middle of the night in your dark room and you turn on the light and your whole room is light. It's so bright you can't even look. But if you just have a little bit, you just need a little tiny bit of light to be able to see. That the darker a place is, the less light you actually need to bring. You don't feel inadequate. Don't say, "Oh, I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not Moses. He's the one able. I'm not Joseph. We're talking about Joseph." You don't need to have all that light. You just need a little bit of light. And in fact, if you're in a dark place, wherever that dark place is, even in your mind, in your home, in your environment, whatever it is, you don't need so much light. Yes, Vilma.
Sorry. So it's not at sunset that the lights are lit for Hanukkah, like the Shabbos. You're saying you actually have to go outside and see a star?
Meaning a star, 3 stars is what the Torah uses to say when it's dark out. But meaning nightfall. Back then, they couldn't really tell time. How did they tell time? By like, oh, when these 3 small stars come out, that means it's already nightfall. But it's just a term that we use. But it just means nightfall, nighttime, when the nighttime comes out.
So then how do we tell? Like, how do I know exactly when to do the light?
Yeah, you can go on the internet, say what time is nightfall in my town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what.
And then I have one more question. So Joseph and all these stories are very, very detailed. There's a lot of drama and a lot of, reasons why they do things. And it's not always clear, because there's so many stories going on at the same time, and everything and the families are connected to each other. So whatever happened before, that storyline is extended. Yeah. So with Joseph, like what happened to him, there was reasons why, like, he was sunk into a pit and then had to, be imprisoned and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So why did he, I guess my question is, he didn't decide to then get out of his situation. He decided to accept his situation and work through it. He didn't want to just immediately run back to the safety of his family, right?
Well, he couldn't, but yeah, I mean, he was still, Pharaoh probably would have killed him, but yes, he had clarity that this was meant to be. And in fact, he's going to say that when Yaakov passes away and his brothers think that Joseph now is going to kill them, take revenge, he says, no, it was all on purpose. It was so that I'd be able, ultimately the famine was going to hit Israel and they were going to lose food. And because of his position, he was able to feed his family. And it began the enslavement in Egypt, right? God told Abraham, you get 400 years. When did that 400 years begin? Now, when Joseph is now in Egypt, that is when the 400 years begun.
But it didn't happen for 400. It only happened for 200, right?
Well, the Jewish people, yeah, it was, well, in a certain way, it begun now. But the actual hard the real enslavement doesn't begin for quite a long time. There's 2 ways to calculate it. Whether, right, they say it begins now. This is it. The beginning, it starts now, and then they left. Yeah, 400 years later. Or did the enslavement really start when the Jewish people as a whole became actually enslaved to Pharaoh? Yeah, that was only 200. Actually, it wasn't even really 200 years. It was actually very short.
So then the question is,
yeah.
And my son has the same question. How long did these people live? Did they live hundreds of years?
Well, Yaakov, passes away at 180, 175, 170. Yeah, and then it's going to start to go down. It's going to start to go down.
Because according to the Torah, Adam lived hundreds and hundreds of years more than these
God
people.
Stopped that. Right. So the Torah talks about that. God stopped the living that long. He saw that it was unhealthy.
Yeah. So my son is noticing all these things and he has a lot of questions. He's like, but why and how? And I'm like, I don't know, but something changed. People changed.
Yeah, God, whatever. Right. And why wasn't a lot of things changed? There's a period of why wasn't the Torah given in the beginning of time? There has to, why didn't Adam get the beginning of Torah? There was 2,000 years before the giving of the Torah, 3,000 years or 2,000, 2,500 years until the giving of Torah. What? Things change. That's exactly right. Says the Torah. There's things change. Things have to change. Certain things have to happen before other things have to happen. It's exactly right. People have to live a certain period of time in order to accomplish whatever they need to accomplish. and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So this pharaoh of the plagues,
Yeah.
is that the same pharaoh that
It was unclear. It's unclear.
okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
It seems not,
Okay.
but it's not very clear. It's a debate. It's a debate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that the other person done?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to
Yeah, no,
interrupt. Anyways, for Havdalah, since this is a Hanukkah festival, so are we doing the Havdalah over spices during
good question.
Hanukkah?
Yes, we will. Good question. Very good question. Yes. Yeah.
So
we do.
basically, it's still the same, just like regular Shabbos. Spices, candle, and vino.
Yes, and vino.
Wine.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll
All
when
right.
we do halachas, we'll do some halachas. I'll talk about when do you do Havdalah first. It depends where you are. Do you do Havdalah? I'm sorry, menorah before Havdalah. But okay, spoiler alert: you do Havdalah before menorah lighting. Okay,
Oh. Well, yeah, it's actually.
It depends where you are.
okay,
In shul,
makes
it's going to be the
sense.
opposite. But
Yes, it makes
makes sense,
sense.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, because yeah. All right. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so God willing, tonight will be Nagunim, and I wish you all a very festive first day. See you tonight.
Thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Bye bye. See you.
Thank you.
Bye, gesund.